Today we are at Studio 89 talking about breaking the silence in terms of racial profiling as well as systemic discrimination, particularly within Peel Police. So Ranjit is the organizer. Ranjit, would you like to introduce yourself a bit more for our viewers, as well as what was the purpose of this meeting precisely?
Okay, the purpose of the meeting today was to inform a lot of our youth today that are really curious and interested in finding out more about Peel Police, but more about systemic racialized discrimination and what they can do and how they can organize in order to bring about change.
Thank you very much, Ranjit.
We need to acknowledge that there is systemic racism before we begin to change. So if we look at systemic racism, it's going to look very differently to each individual that walks into an institution. As a brown person, as a South Asian person, when I walk into an institution, if I see a poster, and a poster's got a turbaned person on it, and it's got a black person on it, and a white person on it, I'm thinking, you know what? They sort of reflect my community, and the community is changing. But if that poster is all that institution has that reflects the people, then they're not doing their job. So if we go into an institution and they've got a beautiful folder with 100 different languages on it, but when you look behind the counters, all the people are white, then quite frankly, there's a problem, right? Because there hasn't been acknowledgement, because if there was, they'd understand that the community needs to be reflected. So I know as I go in to any institution, if there's only white people there, and these people may not be systemically understanding of what they're doing that is harming and creating barriers. But we, as people of color, racialized people, need to bring that to their attention.
I don't even know what to say about the system that we live in, but I think it needs to change, and I think that it's going to start from the head. And I believe that the system's not broken, it was built this way. And until not only minorities stand up, but even other nationalities stand up and say, hey, we see there's an issue here, that's the only way it's going to stop. Other than that, we're going to continue being harassed, people are going to continue being killed, and families are going to grieve because police feel they can use unnecessary force and the system doesn't, hold them accountable for their actions.
The relationship between your police and your communities has created such a measure of distrust between community members and the police that you have, and we have them too in Toronto, you have shootings, for example, or serious vicious assaults witnessed by dozens and dozens of people who could provide valuable information to the police to arrest these people, have them prosecuted, and put the bad guys in jail. When the police arrived at the scenes of these offenses, nobody saw anything. Why is that? I'm sure a part of it is a fear of recrimination from the people who conducted the violence in the first place. But a large part of it is that there is simply no trust between people who live in these communities, which the police call high crime areas, based on their own selective statistics. There's no trust between the residents and the people who live there, and the officers trying to investigate these offenses.
I never knew about racism until I married a black man and had mixed-race children. And that 35 years of lived experience of seeing your loved ones going through so many things. I can remember, for example, when my husband came from Jamaica, he couldn't get his driver's license here. 7 times he failed. And that shows you there's systemic racism right within that whole system too. He was a very good driver. So it's through that lived experience that I actually discovered an organization called BCAN, the Black Canadian Action Network of Peel Region. And 12 years ago when they formed, they welcomed me as an ally, and for me it was a refuge. It was like a safe space where I could get education from these black people who were from all different organizations.
So in terms of the Association of Black Law Enforcers, our organization was started in 1992 to do 3 things. Improve the relationship between the community that we come from and the profession that we've chosen. And when I talk about law enforcement, I'm talking about federal, provincial, and municipal policing. federal and provincial corrections, border services, and other entities that have a responsibility for enforcing provincial and federal statutes. So we have members from the RCMP, the OPP, Toronto, Peel, York, Durham, Ottawa, federal and provincial corrections, as I said.
Our media in the city, especially the Toronto Star, especially Jim Rankin, Patty Windsor, Wendy Gillis, and quite a few others, they have been very good in exposing the police bias, the data on carding, the data on racism, and that has prompted me and others to be at the police board meeting.
My name is Everton Dwight Campbell, but I go mostly as Dwight. As you can see, I'm tall, dark, and handsome, so I fit a lot of the stereotypes, right? I've been stopped by police countless amounts of times. As for myself and my personal group of friends, we could sit down and exchange horror stories for hours. When I was about 16, and I was in Brampton, I was just playing some video games at my friend's house, and it was almost 11:30, something like that, so I decided to go home. It was a cold winter night, and my friend was no more than, perhaps I'd say like a 7-minute walk. In any event, as I'm walking now, I'm literally like about to step foot on my driveway, and all of a sudden a cruiser pulls up. So as he pulls up now, he says to me, he was like, "Do you live here?" And I was like, "Yes, officer, I do live here." So then he was like, "Can you show me some ID?" So up until this point in time, I was under the assumption that, yeah, this is my legal obligation. I'm supposed to present them my ID. So I gave him my ID, so he was running my ID. While he was running my ID, all of a sudden another cruiser pulls up, right? And as the other cruiser pulls up now, there's like this big cop that comes out. And as you see, I'm not a short guy, but this cop was towering over me. You know, he's probably like 6'6", maybe like 250 pounds. You know, I'm like 195. Well, now I'm currently 195 pounds. At the time, I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 160 pounds. But in any event, he says to the cop as he comes out, the big cop now, and he's like, "Search him." So immediately this cop just grabs me, throws me on the back of the cruiser, starts emptying out all my belongings, throwing my wallet, my keys, everything on the ground. And it was a lot of snow on the ground. It was a cold winter night. And he's just saying to me, he was like, "Oh, so you really like to look in people's cars, huh? You like to look in people's cars. You're just lucky that we found you in front of your house, otherwise we'd F you up right now." You know, and they're accusing me of looking in people's cars in my own neighborhood, on my own block, like, you know, on a cold winter night when I'm just trying to get home to some warmth, you know. So, and anyways, they left, and after they checked my name and everything, they realized I didn't have no criminal record. I wasn't known to police. So then they were like, "Have a good night," you know, and that was basically it. And I had to pick up my things out of the snow, and that was that.
We talk about, a lot of times when we talk about systemic racism, it's interchangeable with the term institutional racism. And so this is why Ranjit has placed so much emphasis on the systemic nature of racism. Now, it follows logically that the stakes are quite high for the police. Because if we acknowledge systemic racism, as Howard says we should, and as Dwight says we should, then systemic racism feeds into calls for systemic change. You need to overhaul the institution as a whole in a very substantive and meaningful way. And obviously, police officials like Jennifer Evans, who are defenders of the status quo, are thereby going to beat back charges of systemic racism. So I want to get a little bit into the sort of the rhetorical mechanisms that the police employ in order to deny racism and the means by which we as concerned community members might respond.
Well, my name is Anshul Mogla. I am the Program and Events Coordinator for Studio 89. We talked a lot about what's going on in the police force and systemic racism, and it's a very important discussion to have, but I think at the same time we need to recognize what's going on within ourselves and within our own biases. I think we are often so quick to look at someone and just see their exterior and just automatically assume something of them, and in doing so we're only adding to the problem, and we're creating almost this system that we have that's so broken. And so if we can start to just, even within ourselves and in our day-to-day lives, really understand and recognize what we have the power to do and the power to change that we can make, I think that's the only way that we can work towards solutions to eliminating the systemic racism that we have in our police force and within our other boards.
My name is Dwight Campbell. I'm a resident of Peel. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, I feel that one of the best ways in which we can tackle systemic racism is to first strengthen numbers. We need to mobilize our people. Black and brown alike, all racialized peoples need to come together on a united front. In addition to that, we also need to see more diversity within our community, because I mean, it doesn't make sense that over 60% of the residents in Peel are racialized people, but yet our police force is not representative of that. And furthermore, also I think that one of the other issues is a lot of the police officers that we get are people who aren't even from Brampton. A lot of them are from Barrie and from all sorts of different issues, so they don't really have any sort of connection to Peel. So if we were to get people who actually have a vested interest in seeing Peel do better, I think that would definitely put us in the right direction.
Okay, well, first of all, my name's Patty Ann Traynor. I'm a retired high school teacher, and I am the mother of 3 mixed race black, our society calls them black children, who are now adults, successful adults. And in raising my children, that taught me about the experiences of racism in our society, especially anti-black racism. And so in Peel region, for example, with the police, there are certain things that police forces are doing, and we have a wonderful police services chair now, Mr. Amrik Alawalia. I believe that he has the vision, and he really he knows what we need to do to bring this police force into the 21st century. We definitely need to be listening to what the Police Services Board is trying to do. One of the biggest things is the training of the police, and to bring in more black and brown officers is going to be very important.
So today, social justice group had very vibrant talk about systemic discrimination and racial profiling, particularly in police area, especially in Peel police region, and that was a quite vibrant talk. Tahir Gora, TAG TV.
#1 multicultural channel. This is TAG TV.